we could see those values in the mid-30s.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Tomorrow at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing. I'm Esther McBay and here's what's coming up over the next hour. The rivals to be our next Prime Minister are still arguing about how to help households as bills rocket this winter. I'll bring you the latest from our political editor, Darren McGaffrey, and talk with former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith, who is supporting Liz Truss. I'll ask Rishi Sunak's supporter and chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon, about Sunak's radical plans for education. Do you think children still should be studying maths and English at the age of 18? And of course, we're talking exams as students get their first results from today. From exams which have actually been sat for the first time since before the pandemic in person. I'll ask West Midlands Mayor Andy Street what legacy the Commonwealth Games leave as English finish second on the medals table. And I'll talk to the Independent's chief political commentator John Rentoul about Labour and how they plan to use Tory attack lines against them. And as always, do get in touch with us by email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 12. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The cost of living crisis is expected to get worse, with a consultancy firm warning energy bills could hit £4,200 in the new year. That's around £650 more than Cornwall Insight had previously forecast. Well, the energy regulator Ofgem announced it's changed the way it calculates the price cap. Energy bills are forecast to be slightly lower in the second half of the year. Conservative leadership candidate Rishi Sunak says he'd push to save money within Whitehall to help millions of people through a tough winter. The former Chancellor says if he becomes Prime Minister, he'll keep one-off borrowing to an absolute minimum. Conservative MP Mark Harper believes Sunak's proposed plan will help struggling households.
Big difference of view between him and Liz Truss on how to deal with the big economic challenge and get people through what's going to be a tough winter. He wants to deliver economic support to the poorest and most vulnerable. Liz is setting out a tax cut that delivers a lot to the best off in society, nothing to pensioners and nothing to those on the lowest incomes. And that's going to be one of the big differences, I think, that our members are going to have to choose between.
Liz Truss says tackling antisocial behaviour will be a key priority if she becomes Prime Minister. As part of her campaign, the Foreign Secretary's promised to strengthen the police force, vowing to recruit 20,000 extra officers to make streets safer. The FBI has raided Donald Trump's Florida estate as part of an investigation into his handling of official presidential documents. The former US president says officers broke into his safe while searching for classified records from the White House. In New York at the time of the raid, Trump described the action as unnecessary, saying he's been cooperating with government agencies. Democrat and human rights lawyer Kazim Rashid told us it's a major development.
We'll see what the FBI has charged him with or what they're trying to charge him. We'll find out soon enough. It's too early to tell. But I think the sheer fact, and I just want to really emphasize this point, is that this isn't a political investigation. This was something that was signed off by Christopher Wray, the FBI director who Trump himself approved and appointed, and approved by a judge as well.
The NHS has virtually cleared the backlog of people waiting more than 2 years for a routine operation. In January, more than 22,000 people have been waiting 2 years or longer for scans, checks and surgery. Now there are fewer than 200. Earlier this year, the NHS published a recovery plan to tackle the pandemic backlogs. The next aim is to eliminate 18-month waits. NHS workers in England and Wales have been asked to vote on industrial action following a dispute over pay. Both the Royal College of Nursing and Unite Union are recommending members support a walkout. Officials say the current NHS staffing crisis is causing unacceptable risk to patients and workers. The ballot closes in mid-September. The exam pass rate for students sitting their exams in Scotland is at its lowest since the COVID-19 pandemic. Figures from the Scottish Qualification Authority show the number of pupils who received an A to C grade was just under 79%. That's down from 87% last year. It's still higher, though, than in 2019, which is the last time formal exams were set. A 4-day amber warning for extreme heat's been issued from Thursday across parts of England and Wales. The Met Office says temperatures are expected to reach the mid-30s. It's after a heat health alert was issued for much of the country. Some regions are also facing hosepipe bans because of the extended dry spell. John Travolta has paid tribute to his Grease co-star Dame Olivia Newton-John, who's died aged 73. Well, writing on Instagram, he said, "You made all of our lives so much better. Your impact was incredible." Her husband confirmed she passed away peacefully at home in California, surrounded by her fans, friends and family. Fans have been leaving flowers on the singer's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the briefing.
Well, another day, another row between the Liz Truss and the Rishi Sunak teams over their proposal to help households as the cost of living rockets. Last night, Boris Johnson's deputy, Dominic Raab, said the party would be writing an electoral suicide note if Liz Truss became Prime Minister and pushed through an emergency tax-cutting budget. And Truss supporters seized on what they called a huge U-turn as Sunak pledged more emergency support for households. So let's talk now to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, about what's going on. So cost of living, without doubt, the biggest issue to the public. And what we're seeing now is tensions, not just between the two leadership groups on how they deal with it, but also growing tensions within the groups, trying to, particularly in Liz's case, nudge her along to say, what are you going to do to support the most vulnerable, coming from Sajid Javid in her case, if you're to believe what you're reading in the papers.
Yeah, indeed. And it's really interesting, this, isn't it, that, you know, this campaign started 4 weeks ago, essentially, with this big divide between Liz Truss, who wanted to cut taxes and bring down the kind of cost of living crisis in some ways through that and get money in people's pockets, as she put it. Versus Rishi Sunak, who says, well, actually, yes, I want to see tax cuts, but not until much later on, until we get inflation under control. And yet, in the space of 4 weeks, Esther, we've already seen the argument move on to, well, that's all kind of a good debate, but actually, frankly, what are you going to do, not like in a couple of weeks' time or a couple of months' time, what are you going to do immediately when you become leader about this cost of living crisis, particularly about energy? We heard today from the Cornwall Group, a consultancy firm, who now say that bills could hit, for a typical average household in Britain, £4,266 a year by January. Now, that is way up more expected. That's a rise of £650 on what they were estimating only last week.
Yeah. So it's all galloping along at a pace as well, isn't it? People are realising now it wasn't what we thought the increase would be. It's going to be even more. People are getting more aware of it. So do you think that sense of urgency is reflected within government?
Well, clearly not, in the sense that Downing Street came out yesterday and said, well, it's not up to us now to make these big decisions. You know, frankly, obviously Boris Johnson is leaving in 4 weeks' time. It would be wrong, they would suggest, for him to make some big, massive policy decisions. At the same time, there's a clamour clearly from the opposition, from Labour and the Lib Dems, saying people cannot afford to wait for these decisions to be made. And there is this growing sense of urgency, concerns about potentially what Norway might do. We get a hell of a lot of gas from Norway this winter, whether they could limit supplies and where that would leave us. I mean, Kit Malthouse was talking last night about telling hospitals to make sure they've got enough fuel to potentially fill up generators to go.
In a way, though, the fact that you have got two people competing to be the next Prime Minister, if ever you could apply more pressure than ever before, it is now. So in a way, whilst you say, well, Boris Johnson isn't going to be doing anything, you've got the exact ear of those two. So in a way, from me, who sort of knows the inner workings of politics, I think you could get things done quicker and more effective and efficiently, and the sort of the Cabinet Office and the civil servants are meeting with both of the teams to say, how are we going to get this delivered ASAP?
Yeah, indeed, and as you would expect, and that happens just ahead of general election campaigns where civil servants meet with the opposition, don't they, just in case they win and all that sort of stuff. And there is preparedness work, and we know that Liz Truss has promised an emergency budget, we think within weeks. I'm sure Rishi Sunak would probably go down the same route. I think what's really fascinating, though, is the speed with which it is moving and that sense of urgency, even within both camps. As I say, we started out 4 weeks ago talking about kind of big economic questions about taxation and inflation. Now we're seeing a recognition from both camps that, frankly, there's going to have to be more handouts. Let's be honest about this.
Well, hang on, Liz doesn't like that word. She's not wanting to do handout.
Well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, in the end, she is, because in the end, if this consultancy group is right, and if we're going to see energy bills go over £4,000 per annum from the start of next year, the government is any government is going to have to do more. Even a Liv Truss.
And everybody will scream U-turns when everybody's saying, please do a U-turn. But obviously, and we will be speaking to IDS and we'll say, what is it? Is it a handout? What will she be doing? So we're speaking to him in a second. Darren, as always, finger on the pulse. Thank you very much indeed for starting the show for us today. Well, here we are. Former Conservative Party leader William Hague came out in support of Rishi Sunak last week, but Sir Ian Duncan Smith, also formerly a leader of the Conservatives, is firmly behind Liz Truss. And he joins me now. I don't know if you heard that interview there with our political editor about handouts. Liz has said no to handouts. It's all about tax cuts. Do you think there will be inevitable handout to help those most in need?
Well, first of all, can I just offer a little word of caution? We are talking about a forecast, and we know that forecasts aren't always correct. So the important thing here is not to base everything on sets of forecasts. After all, even the Bank of England got most of their forecasts wrong. The OBRs had their forecasts completely wrong because they're now collecting more revenue than they thought, 90 billion in the last year, and there's a windfall of revenue coming in now as a result of inflation to the Treasury. So these are issues that literally months ago were not expected but are now coming in. And so when we deal with forecasts, be very careful that we don't run around screaming, this forecast is truth. We don't know. So the first thing is that Liz Truss has made it very clear from the outset that she will take whatever measures are necessary. She said so on the Sky debate the other day. She said it endlessly the whole time. But a priority right now, having committed to reduce the burden of taxation. And this is not just a giveaway. This is about getting the economy growing, because the truth is most of the forecasts are based at the moment on the high tax level that we have, which means that we're likely, if that doesn't change, to head into a recession. If we head into a recession, then that means people will have less money, a likelihood of fewer jobs, and therefore be worse off. And so what we're trying to do is change the baseline of the forecast by lowering the cost of living through taxation as well as a start. Get the economy growing, that helps. Then you may have to make some interventions, but those are interventions based on what really works. After all, let's bear in mind, only, 2.5 months ago? Not even that. We put £15 billion as a government into people's pockets, and most of that is still yet to arrive. So even in September, the last payments will come through for those on tax credits. So we need to understand, at the time the IFS said, that pretty much levels the playing field. So we need to understand better what are the newer pressures coming in and how best can they resolve them. But the priority is on day one to do what she said, which is to lower the burden of taxation, which will help the economy grow. But she's open to looking at issues, but we need to look at them carefully, not be running around on some panic about what may happen or may not happen. We need to know what is happening, and that's the key element.
Ian, you've spent most of your political career in sort of supporting people who are probably have got the least, whether that's through the Centre for Social Justice or whether that's through Universal Credit, the new system that you brought in and oversaw. Is this now, in these times of sort of a cost of living crisis, people will call it, is this going to be the enabler that is going to support people?
Well, like everything else, governments exist to make sure that people can get on with their lives, that they don't face unexpected crises. And of course, the cost of living is driven mostly from outside of the UK, such as fuel shortages because of the war in Ukraine, gas supplies being cut, Europe in desperate situation, and also because of the demand outstripping supply as a result of what was really, in my view, a too deep and too long lockdown that has created that problem. So these things are things which each individual country have to deal with, but they are global. The bit that really has not helped us earlier on was the Bank of England's failure to understand early on what those pressures were. And actually, it ended up a year ago pumping much more money into the economy through what's called quantitative easing. And all that did was raise asset prices and make it much more difficult for the people on lower income to actually gain any assets because the costs went spiraling. And that has fueled domestic inflation, no question. The Treasury signed off on that huge splurge of quantitative easing a year ago, which they shouldn't have done. So we are where we are now, and we're having to deal with that process to try and bring it back under control. So all of that is part of the equation, bringing inflation back under control, but getting the economy growing. If we don't get the economy growing, if we don't get those tax reductions, then you can kiss goodbye to any debate about whether or not we can supply people with money for the cost of living, because the economy will be crashing, revenues will crash.
Will Liz Truss then,
so that's the key thing.
Following on from what you're saying there, Ian, will Liz Truss reform the Bank of England?
Well, she definitely wants people to look at it. This is not an attack on the idea of independence, but I think it's genuine that mistakes have been made. I saw somebody the other day say, I think somebody in the Rishi's camp saying, oh, it's all right, they've averaged 2%. Well, actually, hold on a second. The reason why the bank averaged their 2% target was because China was growing dramatically at that same period, which actually helped keep those prices down. Now, the key thing here is we're beyond that. China is well below 5% growth, which is what they need to stand still. And the rest of the world is still searching for how they meet this demand with supply of various products. So there are real key issues, the war in Ukraine. So all I say now, we need to be much better judges of when to act and when not to act. And I think it's necessary to look at that. That's not the key area for her. The big area for her is to get what is essentially the highest base of tax that we've faced for literally a generation, to start getting that down. That is very much what Conservatives believe in. We believe that if you can't tax your way to growth.
Ian, on here in the front pages, it's talking about, and whilst you're here and part of the Team Liz, we'll call it, they're talking about sort of inner strife and struggles about how the team is going to support those most in need. So the Chancellor, former Chancellor, I should say, Sajid Javid, says that there should be more targeted benefit claims. Other people are talking about Liz Truss needs to be less ideological and more pragmatic. So what is going on in Team Truss at the moment?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. We're going on. And honestly, there is a whole load of rubbish in the papers today about this. All that happens is that people are asked a direct question about how would you do this? And they answer, this would be the way that you would want to do it, depending on what the priorities were and depending what the requirements are. So the truth is that we are completely united in this regard, that as Liz has said time and time again, and she said it, as I keep referring back, although the media don't want to do this, to the reality that she said we will take whatever action is necessary as and when we see exactly what is required. But in the meantime, her priority is to get on day one with reducing the burden of taxation. This is a benefit to grow the economy. If we don't have growth, and as is forecast at the moment, if we keep taxes where they are, we will end up in recession, and it will be a deep recession. That will destroy the lives and livelihoods of many people around here. So, of course, a priority must be to keep growth going. Yes, action will be taken as and when it is required with regards to individual areas of income. People who, I mean, I run the Centre for Social Justice. I set that up. We've already made observations about what could be done. What we mustn't do, though, is run around in a bidding war right now during a campaign.
I've got one final question, and give me a brief sort of answer. But look, you were leader of the Conservative Party, and it was a tough period. This now is going to be a tough period for whoever becomes leader of the party. Have you taken Liz aside? Has Liz taken you aside and said, Ian, you know, heart to heart, you know, what do I need to do? Or has she come to you in any sort of capacity to ask for support? Because it is going to be a difficult time should she win.
Well, I'm overseeing the campaign at the moment at her request, which is exactly what we're doing. And that's why I absolutely know that we are staying strictly to what we said we would do. She talked to me, I talked to her, I talked to everybody in the campaign. These newspaper headlines, I honestly say, are complete and utter nonsense. You know, it's an attempt to try and stir up some kind of debate. There's no row going on. We know very well that we may face requirements for other exceptional expenditure, but she's made clear if and when that comes about, we will look at it. So my constant refrain to everybody is, we know what we're planning to do, but we also accept that we may have to make other decisions as well. But that's what governments does. You know, you don't rule things out. You just say when the evidence arrives. And at the moment, these are forecasts. And what we have to recognize is some of the forecasts were very badly wrong. So we know that if there is a requirement, we know if it heads in that direction, we will take whatever action is necessary.
Thank you very much indeed for giving us some time today. I know you've got a busy day and few weeks ahead of you. Thank you very much. So next, I'll be talking with Robert Halfon. But before that, let's take a look at the weather.
This morning, the Met Office have issued an extreme heat warning. The amber warning extends across large parts of England and Wales for later this week, Thursday into Sunday. High pressure will continue to dominate, bringing sunny skies for the next few days. But towards the end of the week, slightly hotter air pushes in. Not as hot as it was in July, but the prolonged nature of this hot spell could cause some health issues. That's why we have issued that warning. There will be plenty of hot sunshine out there today. A bit more cloud across northern Scotland, maybe one or two showers, certainly across Shetland this morning, but they're tending to drift away to the north. Quite a bit of cloud over the Highlands, but otherwise just a bit of wispy cloud here and there. Plenty of strong sunshine, lifting the temperatures to the mid-20s, to the high 20s, perhaps across up to 30 or 31 Celsius in the south. Through this evening, a balmy summer's evening. Still a bit breezy along the Kent coast and certainly quite windy across northern Scotland through today and overnight, and still fairly cloudy here overnight, but elsewhere largely clear skies, maybe a bit of mist forming across parts of East Anglia. Temperatures dropping no lower than about 13 or 14 Celsius in most towns and cities, so quite a warm night and another hot and sunny day to come tomorrow. Any early morning mist and fog will disappear pretty sharpish. Some mist may linger on some eastern coast. Again, a bit breezy across the Kent coast and quite windy across northern Scotland. but otherwise dry, sunny, lots of blue sky, and temperatures getting a little higher tomorrow, more widely in the high 20s across the south. 31, 32 is likely in one or two locations, probably from Cardiff into the Bristol area. It's likely to be the hot spot over the next couple of days. Wednesday evening, again, little change, although we will start to see the cloud thickening over northern Scotland, bit of rain trickling into the Northern Isles and the Western Isles as a weather front sinks southwards. Otherwise, high pressure remains in charge. Sunny skies continue and temperatures just start to rise. Come Friday and Saturday across the south, we could see those values in the mid-30s.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Tomorrow at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 12:25. Well, while the leadership contest is largely focused on the economy, Rishi Sunak has outlined comprehensive plans to reform education should he become the Prime Minister. The most eye-catching pledges included children continue to study maths and English at A-level and a focus on world-class technical institutions. Joining me now is Robert Halfon, a Rishi Sunak supporter and chair of the Commons Education Select Committee. Great to have you with me. So, which bit of his plans for education reform appeal to you the most?
Well, I'm supporting Rishi Sunak, not just because I believe that he is trusted when times are tough, and we saw that during the pandemic, and trusted on the economy and the cost of living, but particularly because he is passionate about education and skills and getting young people on that ladder of opportunity. And that's something I've campaigned on since I've been an MP when I was elected in 2010. And what the most exciting part of his proposals, not just for more free schools, but also to have a British baccalaureate as an alternative to A-levels. And what that would mean would, rather than students narrow at the age of 16, they do at the moment, they'd be able to do a wide variety of technical, vocational, and particularly carry on with maths and English. And I think that is really forward-looking. It's really radical. He's also supported vocational education and says that he wants to create an elite group of vocational colleges, something that would be very welcome, because often we've forgotten about the importance of vocational education in our country, and making sure as well that those people who go to university, that the primary purpose of university isn't just about education, but it's getting people good skilled jobs at the end, to make sure that those courses that students are doing get them good jobs.
If we're saying to pupils they need to do maths and English until they're 18, are we saying the system has failed them up until then? Why are they going to have to do A-level maths and English?
It won't necessarily be A-level maths and English. I mean, look, when I was a student, I was able to do history, English and politics. I was able to narrow at the age of 16, even though I was not that great at mathematics. Now, that shouldn't have happened. I should have been able to do some kind of maths course all the way through. There would have been different levels depending on my standards, and I think that should apply to everybody. We need the world that we're going to move into, the world of artificial intelligence, robotics, automation. It's going to have a profound effect on employment, and maths and English are absolutely key skills. Don't forget, at the moment, we have 9 million adults with low literacy and numeracy skills in our country. Those are people who've been through the school system and yet have low literacy scores. So the system isn't working in the way that it should, and what we should be doing, as many other countries do. By the way, 150 other countries do one kind of baccalaureate or another, and many of them have more successful education systems than we do. So now, we should have a much wider baccalaureate up from the age of 16 in order to be able to do a wider group of subjects, particularly maths and English.
Robert, I know you know this subject inside out, and I've worked as well with a whole range of young people, and they might sooner do technical skills. So yes, you're talking about robotics, IT, data analysis, computer, but there's lots of people who might also say, I want to be, a brickie, a plasterer, a plumber, a carpenter, because they have got, another range of skills that society needs. And sometimes when we force upon them that they have to do maths and English to a much later grade, they don't want to do it, and it actually makes them fall out of the system altogether. Shouldn't we say it's about choice? And that's where I'm interested in the technical route that people can do, that vocational route people can do. So how is he pushing that one further along?
Well, first of all, on the maths and English point, we need maths and English in our everyday lives, whatever job we do, whether people are builders, whether they work in supermarkets, whether they are engineers. We need some kind of basic mathematics, numeracy skills and literacy skills. And to have a country where you have 9 million adults who are have numeracy or literacy problems is just not good enough, and it creates enormous problems in terms of their employment. So, and also, he's not saying everyone should have to do it. He's suggesting it as an alternative to A-levels. I've been to schools, to visit schools where they do the baccalaureate. I've been to a grammar school where they do the wider baccalaureate, and it benefits the students enormously. And they go and they leave and they do get some very good jobs at the end of it. And in terms of vocational education, he's supporting apprenticeships. When he was Chancellor, he invested many millions of pounds in the Kickstart scheme, in the apprenticeship scheme, to get more young people employed and more young people doing apprenticeships. And that worked incredibly successfully. If we have an elite group of technical colleges, so that colleges are no longer, in the past, FE was seen as the poor relation to academic universities, and I've always felt that that was wrong. And what he's saying is we should create a elite group of further education technical colleges to make sure that technical and vocational education is given the prestige that it deserves.
And obviously we've got the GCSE results coming out soon, the A-level results coming out soon, the exams in Scotland are already coming out. We're going to hear this time about grade deflation rather than inflation. How is this going to play out amongst students and their families?
Well, we do need to wait for the results and pay tribute to the students and the teaching and support staff who've done everything possible to make sure their students do well. There are a number of significant problems, however, because we've had thousands of students missing school. There are millions of absent children, 1.7 million persistently absent children. We know that something like 13,000 children in year 11 have been missing substantial chunks of school. So I'm concerned whether the results will reflect that the children have missed school. I'm concerned whether the results will disadvantage the disadvantaged children still further. But we have to wait and see. Of course, it's been very difficult because we've had 2 years without exams, and now we've gone back to a exam-based system as opposed to an assessment system. But it will have significant effects. We just have to wait and see what happens with the results and help those students. If some students have done badly out of it, help those students catch up and perhaps support them with retakes or whatever is necessary.
Robert Halfon, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Now, the Commonwealth Games finished with a spectacular closing ceremony last night, and England came second. I'll talk to West Midlands Mayor Andy Street next about what it means for sports going forward and for Birmingham. But first, it's your news update with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. Energy bills could end up being higher than first thought. A consultancy firm is warning the price cap will hit more than £4,200 in January. That's around £650 more than Cornwall Insight previously forecast. It comes after the regulator, Ofgem, announced it's changed the way it calculates the price cap on bills. Tory leadership hopeful Rishi Sunak says he'll look at making savings across Whitehall to help millions of people through an extremely tough winter. The former Chancellor says if he becomes Prime Minister, he'll keep one-off borrowing to an absolute minimum. Both he and Liz Truss will present their plans to party members at a hustings in Darlington this evening. Well, the Foreign Secretary is focusing on tackling antisocial behaviour today, saying it will be a key priority if she becomes Prime Minister. As part of Liz Truss's campaign, she's pledged to strengthen the police force, vowing to recruit 20,000 extra officers to, she says, make the streets safer. The FBI has raided Donald Trump's Florida estate as part of an investigation into his handling of official presidential documents. The former US president says officers broke into his safe while searching for classified records from the White House. In New York at the time of the raid, Trump described the action as unnecessary, saying he's been cooperating with government agencies. An amber warning for extreme heat has been issued from Thursday to Sunday across parts of England and Wales. The Met Office says temperatures are expected to reach the mid-30s. It's after a heat health alert was issued for much of the country. Some regions are also facing hosepipe bans. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Esther will be back in a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's now 12:37. Students across Scotland have been getting the results of their first sit-down exams since before the pandemic, and now we know that the pass rate has dropped today at higher level. The number of pupils in Scotland getting an A to C pass was nearly 79%, which was down from 87.3% last year. Our Scotland reporter, David Donaldson, is at a school in Stirling right now. Good afternoon, David. Davy, how is everybody feeling there?
I think people are pretty happy about being here at Stirling High School and getting the results that they've actually got as well. Delighted to say I'm joined by a couple of students here who've very kindly agreed to share their exam results with me. Willow, you've opened obviously the envelope. What is you've got?
I got a B for an advanced higher and a C for a higher this year.
Quite happy with that?
Yes, very happy with my results.
And what does that mean that you're going to do now?
I'll be going to a college to explore art further to see which area I like most, and then hopefully from there maybe go to picking my chosen arts area to a university and exploring that further.
That sounds brilliant. Angus, you've got yours there as well. What did you get?
I got straight A's in my advanced hires.
Well done, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. It was a lot of work, but I'm glad I got it.
And what does that now mean that you're looking to do with these qualifications?
So I'm going off to do a graduate apprenticeship in software engineering at the University of Strathclyde and with JP Morgan in Glasgow.
That sounds interesting. So when do you start that?
Just at the start of September, a few weeks away now.
So a little bit of time before that to maybe let your hair down, maybe a bit of a party with these great results.
Yeah, just relax and then go off and work.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, so there you go. Lots of people getting their exam results across Scotland. Obviously, a lot of people will be very, very happy with the results they've got. As you said there, that they're down on last year, but certainly up on the year before. And you have to remember what these students have had to endure, during the pandemic. Tough times. It's taken a lot of hard work to get the grades that they have got today.
Well, all I can say, absolutely wonderful that they were prepared to reveal their grades live on air. I couldn't have thought of anything worse myself. But I'm loving the different courses that they're doing. I love that idea of choice and fulfilling your potential. I want to ask Angus, and I asked him because he had straight A's, and I would have said you could pretty much do anything you wanted there. But did I hear a graduate apprenticeship? And I want to know why you chose that path.
Yeah, asking the studio there, why did you choose the graduate apprenticeship? Because you could do anything with these kind of grades.
Yeah, well, going into software engineering, it's a more practical subject, but I feel like I learn better by being able to just get my hands dirty with software building stuff. But at the same time, I am very academic, so I quite enjoyed school. So being able to do both of them, get that academic side, but still be able to put that knowledge into practice straight away, is just the ideal way for me to learn.
There we go. Angus, about to start a career there in IT software, so that's going to be absolutely fantastic for him.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted because I think the way technology is changing, I think being there, doing it in real time is probably the way forward. And obviously the arts and wanting to do the art. Was it Willie? Did I get the name right? Willow wants to do the arts there. And is she going to do that sort of straight art? Is she going to do it with IT technical? Is it going to do video? What are we saying that? What's a modern version of art?
What type of art are you going to do?
I really don't know. I'm going to explore a lot. I like 3D art, like sculptures, but I also like 2D watercolours and illustration. So I'm going to explore all of it and then maybe fine-tune what I like the most, maybe combine a couple of them and then further my skills in them.
There we go. Thank you very much, Willow. Yes, so remains to be seen. It's blank canvas, you might say.
Loving that, Davey. Just like the fact that they know where they're going and they're on that great journey. So thank you all for joining us. Well, today, candidates for the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, is in Huddersfield, and in the last hour, she's been quizzed by reporters on how she would deal with the cost of living crisis.
What I'm promising is from day one, people will have lower taxes. They'll also have lower energy bills because I'm going to put a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy. But what we need is a growing economy. And a growing economy will mean more money in people's pockets. But what it will also mean is thriving businesses, higher wages, higher productivity. And the problem we've had for decades in this country is low growth, which has squeezed the funding available for public services.
With respect, those policies are going to provide people with a few £100 extra. People are expecting their energy bills to go up by perhaps as much as £2,000. Why are you ruling out direct financial support to help people struggling with the cost of living?
What I'm talking about is enabling people to keep more money in their own pockets. What I don't believe in is taxing people to the highest level in 70 years and then giving them their own money back. We are conservatives, we believe in low taxes, and what I'm not going to do is announce the next budget in advance. Of course, we'll need to deal with the circumstances as they arise, but my fundamental principle is that people should keep more of their own money, and we should be on the side of people who do the right thing, people who go out to work, people who set up their own businesses, people who are contributing to the economy, because we need economic growth to get through these difficult times. At present, there's a recession predicted. And I don't need to tell people what a recession is like. It would mean people losing their jobs. It would mean hardship. We need to avoid that by growing our economy.
Liz Truss there. So they do say that the public don't vote for divided parties, and the Conservatives are very divided right now as Truss and Sunak battle to become the leader and our next Prime Minister. The hope, of course, is that they'll unite around a new leader, but phrases like electoral suicide vest and as watertight as a sieve hardly help. Well, the Labour Party are looking on using some of those attack lines. Let's speak now to the Independent's chief political commentator, John Rentoul. So, John, great to have you here. How exactly, in 2 years' time or thereabouts for a general election, are they going to use lines that we've all read about and seen and heard?
Yeah, no, the electoral suicide note, which was Dominic Raab's phrase in the Times today, was a particularly sharp phrase that I'm sure Labour will quote again and again. I mean, it may be that in 2 years' time, people will have forgotten a lot of these disputes, but what I think is significant about them is that Conservatives don't seem to be able to help themselves from attacking each other and taking lumps out of each other. And there's no reason to think that that's going to stop just because one candidate or the other wins.
And in a way, people make pledges, what they're going to do as leader. Things are moving so rapidly. They are changing. I know it says screeching U-turn, but as you find out more, you probably do adapt and change. But Keir Starmer, when he wrote his 10 policies about why he should be leader, were very Corbynista, some will say. And most of those now, he's sort of ripped up and thrown in the bin. So for him to say what other people have said in a leadership campaign, it's sort of... He needs to look at his own record, doesn't he?
Very, very good point there, Esther. Because I suspect that what Liz Truss is going to do, as soon as the ballot is closed on the 2nd of September, before the results announced on the 5th of September, she's going to swivel. Her position's going to change. Everything she's been saying so far, and we just saw a clip there, is aimed directly at the Conservative Party membership, and their desire for tax cuts. As soon as the ballot has closed, I think she will switch to addressing herself to floating voters and trying to win the general election. And I think there'll be a very sharp change in tone. Because, I mean, this stuff about tax cuts, which is the current dispute, is astonishing. I mean, she's brilliant at it. She just refuses to talk about what she's going to have to do, which is use the benefit system to deliver help, as Rishi Sunak has done so far, to vulnerable households. I mean, there's no point in giving tax cuts to people who don't pay taxes.
So do you think Liz Truss has played a far more tactical game here? She's just only gone after the members with people who would be looking at sort of what you're doing with tax, where in a way Rishi has been more honest and appealed to the wider audience, but that's the audience once you've got the job, not beforehand.
Absolutely. I think Liz Truss has been utterly cynical and dishonest, I'm afraid.
I think Rishi Sunak has told the truth, but Rishi Sunak has been far too explicit and far too honest. I mean, he has explicitly said, "I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear." That is not the way to win a leadership election among party members, especially among party members who are already suspicious of him, because there's a substantial minority of them who hold a torch for Boris Johnson and regard Rishi Sunak as the assassin. And Liz Truss has just ignored reality. She's ignored all the hard decisions she would have to take as Prime Minister and focused on selling her snake oil, which is tax cuts, to a party that wants to believe in what Rishi Sunak calls fairy tales.
The other thing that I found very interesting, and this is despite the, I should say, blue-on-blue attacks, and some of them you'd say were really quite harsh there, Labour don't seem to be gaining anything from it. In fact, some latest polls from the Techno UK group, they've put Labour is down a percentage point, still ahead of the Tories, but down by 1% to 39, and the Conservatives are up by 1% to 34. So how come Labour aren't getting any benefit from this?
Well, because all the media attention is on the Conservative Party, and although a lot of it is quite vicious, and there is this assumption that divided parties don't win elections and divided parties are unpopular, but actually, if all the media coverage is devoted to the Conservative Party, I think that only does the Tory Party some good in the polls. And the whole point of this leadership contest is to get rid of an unpopular leader, Boris Johnson, and replace him with someone who can do a fresh start. And I suspect that Liz Truss, if she wins, will enjoy a honeymoon. I don't suspect it'll last very long, but I think she will be popular for a while, and we'll see the Conservatives actually going to the lead in the opinion polls. But then the question is, how does she deal with the economic crisis facing us all?
John, you're always round and about in the Houses of Commons. You know what's going on in Portcullis House. Everybody comes and whispers in your ear. And you will know how difficult it's going to be to unite the party. They say it's like herding cats. And I look at the front page of the Eye today, tensions in the Truss camp. The former Chancellor, Sajid Javid, saying he wants targeted tax cuts. Other people coming out saying we need her to be more pragmatic than ideological. Is that her biggest issue coming forward, should she become Prime Minister, getting all the MPs behind her? Especially when you see people now, looks like power struggles in that team, Liz.
Absolutely. And, when she makes her cabinet, there will be a lot of disappointed people because you can't all be Chancellor. And there will be another wave. I mean, the backbenches of the Conservative Party already populated by a lot of embittered former ministers. And that's only going to increase. And as I say, I do think the significance of all this, the abuse that's being hurled. I mean, some very, very personal comments being made by one side against the other. I mean, both sides against the other. I think the significance of that is that I think discipline has been thrown to the wind. And although there'll be some attempt to pull the party together, I just think some of the wounds are quite deep, and I think those hostilities are going to continue for the next 2 years. And I think it's going to be very difficult for the party to unite in time for the general election.
Kevin Maguire the other day said that the Labour Party would probably sooner have Liz Truss as the leader. Do you agree with that or not?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do. I mean, I think she's been underestimated in the sense that her political instincts are much sharper and more aggressive than people thought. But I think if she does what I suspect she's going to do, which is to pivot her position as soon as the votes are counted, and turn to address the floating voters, I think she's going to be a formidable opponent. And I think floating voters will quite like the tax cuts message, but I just think so much damage has been done to the Conservative Party, and she doesn't necessarily have the record as a delivery minister, I don't think, to necessarily make a good Prime Minister. So I think she's heading for trouble.
Oh. OK, we'll have you back on. We'll hear what you have to say next week. John Rentoul, thank you very much indeed. Now, as the cost of living crisis deepens, the price of our food is now at the front of most of our minds. Issues around Brexit and the following pandemic have left the agricultural industry in a strained position, with no real leadership or direction because of the lack of joined-up policy. Our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, has been looking at this for the last year, and this week he is visiting all the home nations to take the temperature of an industry that seems to be adrift. He spent yesterday in Scotland and the borders.
Fields of potatoes whose seed is from Scotland. Prices will rise this year, and some of that is due to our unusually hot weather. Ian Barber of Jamieson Seeds explains.
During extreme heat, these little potatoes here, they can get burnt off. So if these little potatoes are lost during the growing season, your harvest could be halved. So a lot of these roots should possibly have had these little potatoes on the end, but they won't grow anything because they've been burned off. So that's a loss to us because of the dry weather.
Farming in Britain is now at a crossroads, but which road do we take?
I think we need to try and understand what the goal is. We seem to have people shooting into different goals and going in different directions. Nobody's got one main goal that we're all aiming for. So we're not playing as a team, we're playing as individuals. That's definitely something that needs looked at. As to which department is right and which is wrong, that's very difficult to say.
Rising energy prices and market pressures are producing waste, and earlier adjustments around red diesel are now showing in retail pricing.
A lot of potatoes are stored in cold storage, and the cold storage has got to the point where it's now no longer economical to store them. So there's been tens of thousands of tonnes have been dumped for stock feed because there's no home for them to go to. The whole industry runs on red diesel. So any extra cost put onto the farmer is affecting the end user. It can't be avoided.
275, 275, 276, 277, 377, 77, 78, 78, 79, 79.
Carlisle's sales room is one of the largest animal sales in Europe, and it can be argued that the price of our food is set in places like this. Glenn Lucas, dairy sales manager, thinks farming needs a joined-up policy if it is to survive post-Brexit.
We need a common agricultural policy that involves all the bipartisan groups, that involves all the devolved governments, and it needs to be focused in one direction. And it's going to involve compromise on different subjects, but I think if we have that, then businesses and farmers and food producers can see the next 10 years. And then once we're in the fifth year, we can start developing the next 10 years, because this policy will be ongoing, it will be changing to meet the needs of our country in the future. At the moment, we have got a very fragmented group of devolved governments, and that's not helpful. And I think if we have a bipartisan group this policy won't be perfect if we're going to get everybody together, but I see if we do that, it will help investment for the future, and it'll help our businesses go forward.
If the cost of living is to be addressed, food and fuel will be at the top of that list, and government must listen and set down a clear roadmap for the future. Dougie Beattie, GB News.
And you've been emailing us in. Anne says, great to see schools actually making children sit exams again. The last 2 years have not been a fair assessment on people's true abilities. Thank you for that. Now, you've been watching The Briefing with me, Esther McVeigh. Next up is Mark Longhurst with On the Money. But first, let's see just how hot it's going to get right around the country.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Tomorrow at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage. Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.